Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Haunt of Love and Lies. Episode 8. Chapter 66. Killian's point of view. I was at the training field with Morgan, Mason, and some warriors when Ryan and Mind linked me. What is it? I paused, listening attentively. She always mind-linked me regarding my mate. I could sense the panic in her voice, and that caused a churn within me. It's Luna. I think she's, Ria began to stutter, her words fumbling. I couldn't help the growl that escaped my lips. Stop stuttering, Ria, and speak. I growled through the mind link. I heard her whimper in fear as she mumbled hastily. Yes, Alpha. It's Luna. I think she's going into heat. I froze. What? Sheila was going into heat? That shouldn't be. Not now. She's in pain and she needs you. Please hurry, her scent is too strong and the unmated wolves are after her. I growled angrily. I didn't bother asking any more questions. I mind-linked all warriors, asking for only mated wolves. I left the training field with Alan and a few mated warriors. I growled angrily as Morgan tried to follow us. He shouldn't come along, and there shouldn't be any unmated wolves around her at this moment. Not only would Sheila not be thinking straight, but neither will the unmated wolves, as the only thing on their minds will be to F*K the female in heat. Morgan simply rolled his eyes, ignoring my protests. He shifted into his wolf, not giving a F*K to what I was about to say. I left the training field and shifted into my wolf, Riker. I didn't like any of this. When in heat, the female produces a strong scent, luring unmated males to her. The female only gets into heat when she has met her mate. The scent produced by the female is for her mate to get to her, as during heat is the best time to become pregnant. The female scent attracts all males except the mated ones, because they all respond to the heat scent of their females. However, when a female is going through heat and her mate isn't with her, it can be painful and also end in disaster, with unmated males wanting to F*K that female whose scent is enticing and addicting. Sheila was in danger. I reached the castle, and the most alluring scent I have ever smelled invaded my nose. It had my wolf growling in my head as we became drunk on this enticing scent, our female scent. Ria just rushed outside, fear and worry evident in her gaze and features. I reached towards her, but before I could ask anything, she rushed. Luna is not in her chamber. I just left her to get some water for her, but when I returned, she wasn't there. I don't know where she is. I hissed angrily. Riker and I still shared control. I stuck my nose in the air and began to follow my mate's scent. It led me to the woods, in the middle of a meadow. As I neared closer, my mate's sweet, enchanting scent hit me harder. It was the same but more intense and magnified with something that made my eyes roll to the back of my head in ecstasy and caused Riker to growl. Just as Ria said, some unmated wolves surrounded her. Their eyes were dark with wish, and their tongues were hanging out of their mouths. I can smell their arousal. Everyone, stand back. I growled through the mind link. That is my mate, and you're Luna. I growl, this female is mine, and if any of you touch her, I will kill you without mercy. I could smell Sheila's sweet scent, and as I got closer to her, I could tell she was sweating profusely. By the moon, she was beautiful. I moved with speed to her, grabbing her before she collapsed on the ground. "I am here, love. I am here," I whispered, as her eyes closed completely. I carried her in my arms. The growls from unmated males aggravated me. I held Sheila tightly in my arms, my eyes flashing golden at these unmated wolves watching me. The stench of their wish infected the air. They wanted her, and the thought made me growl viciously. "I'm going to teach these two males a lesson. But not now." I should have realized Sheila's heat was approaching as I had been getting bigger, stronger, and more possessive and protective over her these past weeks. It's the same for the males whenever their females are on heat, while their female fills out in her own way, not in muscle like her mate but in soft flesh on her. All of these changes prepare the couple for the pup that comes out of the heat. My heart pounded in a way I couldn't describe just at the thought of Sheila getting pregnant with my pup. It made my heart flutter but at the same time scared me. Sheila can't get pregnant with my pup before we break the curse. I carried her in my arms, gating towards the castle. I headed to her chambers, ordering RIA to fetch the Pax doctor at once. I laid Sheila on the bed. She was thrashing around, writhing in pain. Her fever wasn't going down. I pulled the cup from the table and brought it to her lips. She drank it hungrily while some poured down her skin. I grabbed a towel from the rack to dry the water, starting from her neck and running the cloth slowly down to her chest. Sheila wasn't in her right senses right now, so it was up to me to think straight. Sheila moaned beside me. "Killian," she cried out. "It hurts. Tell me." I wanted to help in any way I could. "What?" She screamed in pain. I hated to see her in such pain. "RIA. Get Maggie here." I screamed through the mind link. I knew exactly what she wanted. The only way to stop her pain was to satisfy her in every way. To mate with her. But I couldn't. At least not without Maggie seeing her. If we don't do things right, Sheila may get pregnant. I didn't want that now. I reached out to her as she began thrashing from side to side on the bed as she grabbed my hands. "More," she groaned, and the way she said my name has me even harder. Just then, RIA, Maggie and her assistants rushed through the door. Maggie went straight to the bed where Sheila was thrashing in pain. "Help her, please," I told her. "You know the only remedy for this," she said this as she and her assistants worked to alleviate Sheila's discomfort. "You know, that's not an option right now. I can't have a pup with a curse on my head." Maggie sighed. "I know." She asked me to leave the room, and reluctantly I did. She and her assistant attended to Sheila while I stayed outside. In a few minutes, she was out. "How is she? Were you able to take away the pain?" "I can't do that. There's no way to take away the pain unless the female in heat gets what she wants." Before I could speak, she did. "Here," she handed a small bottle to me. I queried my brow, "What is this?" "This will ensure Luna doesn't get pregnant during this period. I already gave her one." "Are you sure?" I asked, cautiously, and she nodded. Quickly, I snatched the bottle and gulped down the contents. As soon as I was done, I went into the chamber. I hurried to Sheila's bed where she was groaning in pain. "Killian, please get me out of here!" Sheila cried, her eyes no longer bright blue, her wolf wasn't in control. Pain was imprinted on her beautiful face. I stroke her cheek. "Whatever you want, mate." Killian's point of view. I took Sheila out of the castle to the east borders of the pack, beside the cool river. She was still writhing with so much pain. Her sweet scent and arousal had me completely drunk in her. The burning sun had taken its shade already. I mind-linked everyone to stay off from the east borders. My eyes snapped to Sheila as I was panting with similar need for her. I cradled her in my arms, watching her breathe slowly from exhaustion. Her eyes were closed, and her high fever had calmed down. I sighed, totally exhausted as well. My eyes found the moon's beautiful figure up in the sky. I could do nothing but watch my mate sleep peacefully under the moonlight. I sighed in content, sending an appreciation to the moon goddess for making Sheila mine. Killian's point of view. I watched Sheila as she slept peacefully. After a while, she stirred awake in my arms. Slowly, her blue eyes opened and fell into mine. "Killian." Her weight shifted onto my chest, her gaze fixed on mine. She still sounded weak. I brushed her tender cheek, implanting a kiss on her cheek. "Shh, don't say anything." I stroked her damp locks away from her face. "How do you feel?" I asked, tilting my head to her. Sheila's face turned red, and she buried her head in my chest. Tired and embarrassed. Her soft breath settled on my skin. "It's so embarrassing to know that the entire pack knew what just happened, you know, between us," she muttered slowly. I smiled, stifling a throaty chuckle at her words. "Yeah, I guess everyone does." That, however, was the least of my worries. I was concerned more about my mate than anything else. I pulled her up a little, wrapping her body in my large arms. "Do you feel any pain?" I asked her, and she shook her head. Even in the darkness, she still looked beautiful and flawless. I couldn't stop myself. I pulled my lips to hers, kissing her gently until she could no longer breathe. "We should go back to the castle," I said. "You need more rest in your chamber." I rubbed her skin to provide some warmth. Sheila nodded, too exhausted to speak further. I got dressed and helped her get dressed as well. Instead of having her tire herself walking back to the castle, I carried her in my arms. We reached the castle, and I took her to her chamber, settling her securely on her bed. I brushed her hair back. Her blue eyes gleamed at me. "I will be back, I promise. I just need to tend to some things," I told her, kissing her smooth forehead. I left her chamber and hastened towards my office. I rushed inside my office, heading to the end of the room, where my table stood. From behind, I heard the door open hastily, and then it shut closed, accompanied by a clicking of the door. I spun around to find Thea standing inside my chamber, and the door was locked. "Why are you here?" I asked, almost in a bored tone. She was the last person I wanted to see. I pulled my gaze back to the papers on the table that I needed to work on before joining Sheila in her chamber. "To talk." "Why? Am I now forbidden from entering your office, Killian?" she said, her voice getting closer to me, but I didn't turn around. I didn't want to say anything or do anything that would upset her. No, Thea. You can come whenever you want, but it's midnight. Do you need something? I asked her. Everyone in the pack is talking about you and that woman. She muttered, standing next to me. She needed me, Thea, I said, taking a deep breath. I know. And I understand, Killian. You know I always will. She placed her hand on my shoulder. There's nothing I can do about it. She's your mate destined by the goddess, and I am just someone you need because of a curse. Someone that shouldn't even be in your life. I am just a nuisance, I know. Thea, I started, but she silenced me, shutting her eyes closed. I could see she was fighting back some tears. Her words hit me hard in my chest. That was a lie. She was neither a nuisance nor just a curse breaker to me. Even though I couldn't have anything more with her, I will always care for her. Frankly, seeing you next to her, caring for her, hurts me beyond anything. She voiced, not looking at me. Thea, I called, dropping the papers on the table. I turned to her to face me and found only sadness and pain in her gaze. It made my heart ache. I cupped her face, and she began crying. I'm sorry, Killian, she struggled to speak as tears streamed down her cheeks. I just wish everything would go back the way it was between us before she came. She wrapped her hands around me. But I know it can't. Even though it hurts me, just remember that you are all I live for, Killian. I love you. Her brown gaze bored hard into mine, reflecting her words to me. My hands on her face caressed her cheeks tenderly and Thea leaned closer. She was about to bring her lips to mine, but I pulled away from her, quickly. I promised myself I wouldn't hurt Sheila again. No, Thea. I can't. Her eyes stared at me in disbelief, and an emotion I couldn't recognize. I could also see a flash of rage in her eyes, but her sudden words surprised me. Fine. I understand. Tears slipped down her brown gaze, and she took a step back. Good night, Killian. Her lips brushed my cheek. And she left my office. I exhaled, settling onto my chair. Unknown person's point of view. I was racing through the hallways hurriedly. I could no longer subdue the rage seething through my bones and infesting my mind. I felt my blood becoming hotter than a volcano. I reached for the door and pushed it open. I shut the door behind me. My heart was thudding in an unfamiliar rhythm, showing the intensity of my anger. Even the air around me was charged with a burning heat. Imbecile! I cursed more, remembering everything that happened a few minutes ago. I roved to the tall window at the corner, pulling it open. I shut my eyes and began muttering low chants using magic. Soon, a black owl emerged from the darkness and flew towards the window. My brown gaze watched it impatiently until it stopped on the metal railing of the window. I ripped off a blank piece of paper and plucked a feather from the black owl, moving to the dressing table. I pulled out my dagger and sliced my left palm. My blood began to drip on the blank paper. I wriggled my fingers in the air while muttering some chants. The blood on the paper began to move, forming the words I wanted to convey to someone. I folded the paper and moved back to the window. Take this to the Alpha, I whispered to the black owl. Placing the paper in its beak, its eyes gleamed brightly before flying away, blending into the night's darkness. I returned to pacing the floors. The Alpha was becoming too difficult to control. I hated this. I hated it when things were out of my control. I was beyond furious. I could feel my brown gaze burn brightly in raging flames. I groaned and yelled inside the corner walls. The loud intensity of my yell carried so much power that it caused the torches glued to the wall to burn brightly out of control. Its wild flames grew so intense that they spread out to the light green color of the draperies that covered the windows. Soon, the flames began to spread around and the smell of smoke began to fill the air. That, however, was the least of my concern. I wasn't worried about that. The only problem that seemed to exist in my life was that of a mate. The Alpha's mate. I couldn't tolerate her presence anymore in the pack. It had completely shattered my entire plan. I screamed again in a rage as the fire burned more. The door suddenly jerked open, and I spun around to meet my only ally in this god-forsaken place. His wide gaze widened at the fire consuming the inside. What is happening here? His deep voice sounded with the usual concern as he rushed around trying to stop the burning flames from swallowing the whole place. I gripped his hand firmly, stopping him. Stop this at once. Have you completely lost your mind? He was screaming at the top of his voice. Concern and fear for my life were embedded in his gaze. Yes. I had completely lost my mind and it was infuriating. I had to find a way to keep that Alpha by my side. I couldn't let him go to the other woman, or my entire plan would shatter before my eyes. I would never allow this. I had to think of a way to turn things in my favor. A wicked smile found my lips as an idea popped into my thoughts, and it met the gaze of my lover. We have so much at stake if we do not do something fast, I said, and his face was crippled in confusion. What do you mean? He asked, unsure of my words. But my smile only deepened as the flames now surrounded us. I could feel the heat already. I am willing to do whatever it takes to keep him next to me. I lowered my voice. My words held so much seriousness that he could recognize. What do you need? He asked, ever ready to please me. My lips brushed against his. Bring your Alpha right here, I muttered, a dark smile forming on my lips. He studied me for a second before nodding, and with a wave of my fingers, I parted the wildfire around us, allowing him to walk through. A dark smile found my lips. I will do whatever it takes to ensure you remain next to me, at least not until I gain my revenge first, Killian Reed. Killian's point of view. I had left my office, already making my way to Sheila's chamber when I was mind-linked by Jax and Alan in a hurry. Their voices were in a frenzy. The only thing I registered was that Thea was in danger. I couldn't think straight. I swerved from Sheila's chamber and moved hastily to Thea's chamber, which was at another end of the castle. It was from a near distance away. I could smell and see the smoke that escaped from the hallways. My heart jammed with an unfamiliar wave of fearful emotions as my legs hastened closer. Morgan and Mason were already there, trying to put the fire out. I rushed into her wide chamber. Everything had almost been consumed by the fire. My heart rose in panic within my chest, as my eyes scanned around for Thea. I found her. She was lying motionlessly in the middle of the room. My legs hurried to her as the fire around was still blazing harder even with the warrior's attempt to put it off. "Thea," I pulled her face into my palm, but she didn't respond to my call. Her body was already smeared with black dirt, there were even some burns on her skin. Fear at me, and without hesitating, I chuckled Thea's almost still, and petite body into my arms, rushing her out of the fire. I motioned quickly to the spare chamber closest to her. I dropped her petite body on the bed. "Thea," I tried getting her to wake up but she was not responding. It terrified me. Quickly, I sent for the pack's physician at once. In less than a minute, Maggie rushed in with one of her assistants in the pack. She gated to the bed where Thea was in my arms. She didn't even waste any time or ask any questions before she started inspecting Thea. And soon, I was asked to leave the room so they would tend to her better. A deep hiss left my lips, as I shut the door behind me, leaving Thea in the hands of the pack's doctor and her assistants. I couldn't help but blame myself. This was all my fault. It was my fault that Thea was in that state because of me. I collapsed on the floor, burying my face in my palm. I felt my brother Morgan walk slowly toward me. "What happened?" I asked him. "How did a fire break out in Thea's chamber?" It just didn't make any sense. The only explanation was maybe someone started the fire deliberately. But why? For what exactly? Thea was valuable to the pack and me, losing her would only mean we will be stuck with this curse forever. "I am not sure what you are thinking, brother," Morgan started, his voice forcing me to stare at him. "But I doubt someone tried to murder her." "So, the fire started by itself then?" I asked back, and Morgan sighed, leaning against the wall. "Possibly, because there is no sign of forced entry. And besides, who will want to murder Thea?" Morgan spoke calmly, almost in an exhausted or bored tone. I looked away from him. "No one in the pack would want to murder her, she was the only way we can break the Crescent curse on us. She was truly one of the nicest, and sweetest females I knew. The only person who could want her dead was the monster who murdered her family and almost killed her as well. I first met Thea in the woods, a near distance from my pack. She was bleeding profusely, and her life was in danger. We managed to get her to the pack physician just in time. That day, I never knew the young female I saved was the one gifted by the goddess, the very soul who could free me from the curse and had always appeared in my dreams for the longest. I was only 14 when I was cursed by my father, 14 odd years ago, and shortly after, the dreams started. It was very unusual. At first, I didn't understand the dream. It was more like a dream where I always found myself making love to someone, a female. She didn't belong to my pack, her scent was so unique and different, like nothing I have ever smelled before. It had me intoxicated, and weak to my knees that the only thing I wanted was to pleasure her. To make love to her in the best possible way. But in every dream, I didn't see her face. Her soft natural curls always covered her face, and whenever I tried to sweep it back to gaze at the face of the woman that made me feel things, I ended up waking abruptly from my dream. Every time. But the dream stopped the day I found Thea bleeding in the woods. And for the first time that night, I saw the face of the woman who had always invaded my dreams, whose godlike body always made me want to worship her, whose moans were like music to my soul and her soft gasps did more wonders to me than I could ever explain. That woman was Thea, and fate would have it, she walked right into my path at the time I needed her the most. Oh, goddess! Thinking about Thea and my past made me more guilty than I was. She didn't deserve all this. She deserved better. She deserved all the love she could get. It was not easy for her to lose her family all in one day. I could still remember the day she told me about her past. I could see nothing but pain in those brown depths of hers. Her entire family was murdered by an alpha. She said it was from her previous pack. Alpha killed her entire family and was still after her life. But thankfully she escaped. I wanted so badly to find that imbecile and murder him with my bare hands, but she wouldn't give me his name, nor the name of her previous pack. She said she wanted to forget it all, her past and her sadness. And for a short while, she did, but lately, that familiar sadness had taken dominance in her brown gaze, and it was all my fault. I did this to her. I brought nothing but pain and sadness to her life. I really didn't want to hurt her. But the sad truth was, I didn't feel anything for her. I sighed in frustration. Everything was so complicated. My life was utterly complicated. I had two women in my life, both of which I didn't want to hurt. One was my mate, whom I loved so much, and the other was the one gifted by the goddess, the one I needed. This was frustrating. I felt Morgan's hand on me, but before I could look his way, the door to where Thea was, pushed open and Maggie stepped out with her assistance. I was up on my feet. "How is she?" I asked. I didn't have the strength to bear any negative news. Thankfully, the fire didn't do much damage to her. She just needs rest. In no time, she will be back to herself. Maggie explained gently. "Thank you," I said when Maggie was done. "Can I see her now?" She nodded in response. I turned to glance at Morgan, whose gaze was on me. It seemed like he had something to say, but I couldn't listen to anything right now. I just wanted to make sure that Thea was all right and out of danger. I left Maggie and Morgan together, strutting into the chamber where Thea was. She looked so peaceful on the bed, curled up under the covers. I could see some of the burnt wounds on her skin, but thankfully, she'll heal in no time. I plopped on the bed, positioning myself next to her sleeping figure. The skin around her eyes was strained and tired from crying too much. My large hand moved to her face and I began to stroke it tenderly. To my surprise, she stirred slowly on the bed, groaning from too much pain. A painful cry left her lips, but I held her firmly in my arms. "Shhh. Do not move too much," I told her quietly. Thea's big and rounded eyes pulled open and her brown irises were on me. "Killian," she choked a sob, and I pushed back some locks of her brown hair that covered her face. I forced a smile, hiding the pain I felt seeing her in this state. She tried to look around the chamber, but instead, groaned in pain. She held onto my shirt tightly, and I wrapped my large arms around her. "Killian, I really thought I would die," she said, sobbing into my chest. "Do not say that, Thea." I pulled away a little, bringing my finger to her chin. I raised it gently, so I could stare at her perfectly. "Tell me, what happened?" Who started the fire, Thea? I queried. Thea's gaze became softer, and her eyes welled more in tears. I will tell you, Killian, she muttered, counting each word. Strangely, I felt my heart hammer against my chest at the words that were about to leave her lips. Killian's point of view. I don't know why my heart was pounding so loud, there was something in her words that terrified me. But I listened quietly. I really do not know, Killian, she muttered, after a long silence. I was fast asleep in my chamber when the smoke from the fire stirred me awake. By then the fire had spread around. She paused, tears were gliding down her cheek. I brushed it off, listening as she continued. I reached for the door, but it was locked. Someone had locked me and wanted me to die in that fire. Thea burst out in tears. Her words confirmed my suspicion. But who could have tried to murder her? I was sure it wasn't anyone from the pack. But then again, there were still unsolved mysteries in the pack relating to Rowan and the witch that had murdered him. Could it possibly be the witch who tried to harm Thea? It could either be that witch or maybe, the alpha of Thea's old pack had found her. Killian, I know someone doesn't want me to help you to break the curse. Her sudden words crippled my brows. What does she mean by that? What do you mean? I asked. There's no other reason why someone will try to murder me. I am sure whoever it was doesn't want the curse to be broken and doesn't want me to be officially mated to you, and bear your mark. Thea sounded quiet, watching me. The more she kept saying someone, I got a feeling she had a name in mind, but something within me stirred angrily. Even Riker, that had completely withdrawn himself from anything that had to do with Thea, roved to the surface of my consciousness. What are you saying, Thea? Speak plainly. I said, deep down I had a feeling what she was saying. But I just hoped I was wrong. I know you know who I am talking about, Killian. She is the only one who is angry that I will be officially mating with you, and bearing your mark. She rasped. So, you are saying, Sheila, tried to murder you? Even the words sounded infuriating and implausible. I couldn't stop the rage that was slowly rising within me as Thea nodded her head slowly. I pulled away from her, quietly. Think about it, Kill. I cut her off. There is nothing to think about, Thea. Sheila is not capable of something like that, I yelled at her. You didn't mean to. The look on Thea's face killed me. But she needed to remove such thoughts from her mind. Sheila could never do that. Thea was silent for a deafening minute. We both were. Then she nodded with a smile. Fine, Killian. I believe you. I am sure that woman could never do something like that, she yelled in pain as she tried to move from the bed. I rushed to her side, engulfing her in my arms. Easy there, I fell on the bed, and she curled herself on me, writhing in so much pain. I stroked her back tenderly. If it isn't that woman, who else could have tried to harm me? She asked, her voice choking a sob. I am scared they might try again, Killian. I brought her closer to me, and she hung on dearly as if she was clinging to her very life. No one in the pack tried to murder you, Thea. The only person I could think of is him, who murdered your family, and tried to murder you. I said, even though I couldn't clearly see her face, I felt her body stiffen in my arms. I knew she hated to talk about him and her past, but I had no choice. Someone tried to murder her and could do it again. When she didn't speak, I shifted on the bed to see her face. Come on, tell me who that person is. Which pack is it? You don't have to know, Killian, she rushed sharply, crying further. He is evil, Killian, I don't want anything bad to happen to you. And besides, I doubt he knows I am alive, or even at your pack. So please, do not speak of him. She buried her head again in my chest, crying. I remained silent, unable to say a word. After some time, her loud sobs died. You need to rest more, Thea, so you could heal faster, I told her, pulling away, but she held me tightly. Please, Killian, don't leave me. Please, I need you. I won't be able to rest without you beside me, she said, suddenly biting out. Spend the night with me, Killian. The look on her face was pleading, sad and vulnerable. I have never seen her like this. I hated this. Sheila was also waiting for me in her chamber. Please, Killian, I almost lost my life. I need you. I leaned back on the bed, lying next to her. Fine. Sleep tight, I said to her. A small smile found her lips, and she nestled closer to me. I love you, she said, bringing her lips to mine. Thea, I can't, I said firmly. Even though I haven't marked Sheila yet, our bond had grown stronger now that with just a kiss from Thea, Sheila would feel the pain. I can't put her through such pain. I wrapped my hands around her instead, watching her fall asleep, but I couldn't. My heart and my soul were somewhere else. And I wished I was in the arms of my mate. Sheila's point of view. I inhaled deeply, stretching my body on the bed. My eyes pulled open, and I turned on the bed. To my disappointment, Killian wasn't next to me. He didn't return last night. But regardless, I felt amazing. The best I've felt in weeks, and so did 80. It was like enormous energy was bustling in my veins. And I loved it. I was up from the bed, I stripped, rushing for a quick shower. I was out in a flash, and I got dressed in a peach-colored dress, giving my hair a quick brush. I allowed its natural curls to fall on my face, down to my shoulders. I left my chamber to Killian's, but he was not in his chamber. In fact, it didn't seem like he spent the night in his chamber. I went down for breakfast. I found Ria in the dining hall. She greeted me with a smile. I couldn't dismiss the coquettish smiles everyone seemed to be sending my way. It made me uncomfortable, and at the same time made me blush. Where is Killian? I asked as he hadn't come down for breakfast yet. He isn't in his chamber nor his office. Ria took a seat next to me. Well, she began in her usual tone when she had something unpleasant to tell me. Something happened last night, my brows furrowed questioningly. Tell me, what happened? There was a fire in Thea's chamber. It was pretty serious and would have almost killed her if the warriors and the Alpha didn't reach there on time, Ria uttered slowly, in a low tone. At her every word, my brows crippled the more. I don't know if it was because of the fact that Thea's chamber mysteriously caught fire, or that with what Ria was telling me, it only meant Killian was with Thea throughout the night. I guess I was more concerned about the former, but Adi was concerned about the latter. She's one overpossessive wolf, but I couldn't blame her. And what caused the fire? I asked. Ria shrugged, not knowing. But some of the warriors think that someone tried to have her murdered. I scoffed internally at that. It sounded like that was the kind of idea Thea wanted everyone to believe. I wouldn't be surprised if I would be suspected at this time. I pulled my thoughts away from that. A smile found my lips. What is there for breakfast? I am so famished. As if on cue, the helpers began to serve breakfast, and my sweet Morgan decided to join me for breakfast. He took his seat right opposite mine, and we started eating. What happened last night? Ria told me that Thea's chamber was on fire last night and it might be a murder attempt. I said, taking a spoon into my mouth. It's only a speculation. But honestly, I doubt it. The pack is heavily guarded to have someone sneak in and try to have her murdered. Morgan said, gulping down his ginger tea. I had the remaining of my breakfast in silence. Soon, Morgan and I were done. He returned to his chamber to prepare for the council meeting. Recently, the council has been calling for meetings frequently. It seemed important as Valerie and almost all the witches will be attending as well, including Killian, Morgan, and most of the ranking warriors. I left the castle and strolled to the garden not far from the castle walls. The flowers I had planted had begun to blossom beautifully. I bent down to pick some flowers when I felt a presence behind me. It was Killian. But I didn't look back. He motioned closer to me, crouching next to me. "Good morning," I heard him say behind me. There was something about his voice that forced me to turn to him. He was almost a breath away from me. He had already showered and was prepared for the council meeting. "Morning," I replied, noting a particular emotion, or rather, a sadness embedded in his eyes. It made me want to reach out to him and beat it all away. "How is Thea?" I asked, and Killian's face almost splintered. I wasn't furious at him for spending the night with Thea, even though a jealous part of me hated it. "She's still healing," he said. "I am leaving for the council meeting now, please take care," he added, pulling a hand to my cheek. Killian leaned closer and kissed me. Something was wrong with him. Whatever it was, it raised fear within me. Killian's point of view I didn't know when I fell asleep, but I knew this was a dream. It just had to be. Something was incredibly wrong. I was covered with blood. But it wasn't mine. I wasn't even bleeding, at least not physically. But my heart was in pain. I kept walking in the darkness as only the moon's rays followed my trail. Blood was everywhere, dead wolves and witches from my pack covering the earth along with some lifeless bodies that weren't from my pack. Some had the dragon mark of the council army, while I recognized another mark on some of the dead bodies. It was the mark of the dark circle. I couldn't understand what was going on. Why was the dark circle army in my pack? From the looks of it, it seemed a war broke out here. My heart hammered the more as I began searching through the bodies on the ground for someone in particular. Sheila. I released a breath when I couldn't find her among the scattered bodies on the ground. I left the pack house and began racing to the castle when my legs stopped abruptly and I felt like my life had come to an end. Sheila was laying in the middle of the castle grounds. My legs hastened towards her, my heart was pounding hard in my chest. She was wounded severely, and her dress and body were drenched by her blood. I forced my shaking hands to touch her. She was completely cold. I jerked awake. My heart was racing incredulously fast. I scanned around and I was still with Thea. She was sleeping peacefully in my arms. I sighed, dropping my head on the bed. It was just a dream, but it felt so real. I could still feel the pains in my chest from seeing Sheila in such a state. I had to go see her and be with her. Riker was going insane in my mind. He desperately wanted to be near our mate. Slowly, I tried to place Thea back on the bed, but surprisingly, she stirred awake instantly. "Killian, are you going somewhere?" Her brown eyes were focused on me. "Please don't leave me," she wrapped her hands around me, burying her head on my chest. I sighed, shutting my eyes closed. I could barely sleep a wink throughout the night. I just couldn't fall asleep. Whenever I tried to leave, Thea would always stir awake. As the morning invaded, there was this growing restlessness and fear that enveloped my heart. With each passing second it kept increasing. When I left Thea in her new chamber she was already awake. She kept pleading with me to stay with her but I couldn't. The council had called for a meeting again. This time, Valerie and many of her witches will be attending, and so will some ranking members of my pack. I went straight to Sheila's chamber but she was already awake and wasn't in the chamber. I mind-linked Rhiannon, and she informed me my mate was at the pack's garden. Without wasting time, I showered and got dressed. I didn't have breakfast, frankly, I had no appetite. Last night's dream was still lucid in my thoughts and the only thing I wanted was to be next to my mate. I left the castle and headed towards the pack's garden. From afar I sighted Sheila. She was tending to the flowers. I couldn't deny it, she had magical hands capable of bringing life into something. I strolled closer to where she crouched. "Good morning," I said, bending down next to her. Her beautiful face turned to me. "Morning," she sounded, her voice was exactly what I needed. It calmed me deeply, but unfortunately, the fear rooted within me remained. "How are you feeling?" I asked even though she looked better than she did yesterday. "Fine," she muttered slowly, her deep blue eyes searching mine, almost as if she could feel the unsettledness within me. I didn't know why I felt this way, but even Riker felt it as well. It was as if something bad was about to happen. The last time I felt this way was the night my father, along with the Dark Circle army raided the Black Blood Pack and murdered their Luna, stealing the Alpha's daughter. That day I felt it, I knew something bad was about to happen, and it did. The Black Blood Pack attacked us, and the pack suffered so much loss, including a brother. "How is Thea?" Sheila softly asked. I felt a pang of pain in my chest. "Oh, goddess, I didn't want her to think something happened between Thea and me. The last thing I wanted was to fight with her. I needed her so badly that I can't bear for her to be mad at me." "She's still healing," I said to her, and instead of freaking out, she only nodded. Her soft hand pulled up to my cheek. The warmth that formed from the tingles calmed me more, and I leaned into her touch. I pulled closer to her, my head leaning closer till I felt my lips on hers. I kissed her gently. "Killian, what's wrong?" she muttered against my lips. "Did something happen? Tell me." "I am fine." Just take care. Today's meeting will take a long time. Whatever you need, ask either Alan, RIA, or Mason. And please, don't be alone like this. Have someone with you at all times. I said to her, not sure of what I was saying exactly. I just wanted her safe. I have to leave now, I kissed her again, standing up. Sheila stood as well, her eyes were now clouded with worry. Stop worrying. I am fine. Just remember, I love you. I pecked her lips once more, leaving the garden. I joined Morgan and Valerie at the stables. They were waiting for me. I got on my horse, and we started our journey to the council castle. Sheila's point of view I watched as Killian left me. No matter how much I asked him, he didn't say what had him this sad, or maybe terrified. I finished off from the garden, heading back to the castle. Many ranking members also attended the council's meeting, including some ranking warriors, and so did many of the witches, including Lorenzo. I was to meet up with him later in the day, but it seems it would have to be when he's back from the meeting. Instead of heading to my chamber, I went to Killian's office to tend to some work. Ever since he came to meet me in the garden, I have been feeling somewhat anxious. Killian wasn't the type to get saddened or terrified like that. Something must have happened to put him in such a mood, and now I felt anxious and sick, and so did my wolf, 80. I was in Killian's office working when the door pushed open and someone walked in. My head tilted up a little, and my blue eyes fell on Thea. She walked in like she owned the place, closing the door behind her. Her brown menacing gaze was on me, and her hands were folded against her chest. She looked pretty fine to me. It seemed like everyone was exaggerating the whole fire incident, because the woman in front of me wasn't still healing, she was absolutely fine. What is it that you want? I broke the silence, falling my gaze back on the papers I was going through. I felt her move closer, stopping close to the table. I could give you a list of them. First of all, I want you out of this pack, and out of Killian's life. Her brazen words surprised me. I pulled my gaze up to her, dropping the quill pen in my hand. I see you are not just injured from the fire, but you are also sick in your head. I said, I am very busy right now and I don't have the time to prattle with you. So, get out. You think because Killian has been giving you a little of his attention, you've gained some rights. She snickered, leaning on the table. Truth be told, hun, whatever dreams you must be having put an end to it, because Killian may be your mate but he will never be yours. Once the curse has been broken, I will be officially mated to him, bearing his mark. So, do yourself a favor, and get lost, tramp. Is that clear? I watched her as her lips rasped on. The only thing that was lucidly clear to me was that she was trying to get under my skin. She wanted to rile me up. To make me enraged. She was here precisely because of that. But why? I sighed. Thea, the only thing clear to me is that you feel insecure, and I can understand that because as soon as the curse is broken, I will personally escort you out of this pack. And you are upset about something, I am not sure what, and frankly, I don't care. I muttered, forming a little smile. I am too busy for whatever this is, so, do yourself a favor and get out, before I make you. I watched as Thea's face colored with rage, her gaze burning intensely. She pursed her lips to speak, and I could have been prepared for anything but not the words that left her lips. Thea's point of view. Thea, the only thing clear to me is that you feel insecure, and I can understand that because as soon as the curse is broken, I will personally escort you out of this pack. And you are upset about something, I am not sure what, and frankly, I don't care. The hussy muttered, forming a little smile that made the blood running in my veins burn with rage. I am too busy for whatever this is, so do yourself a favor and get out, before I make you. She said calmly, crossing her fingers over each other. This little tramp had gotten quite brazen, and that aggravated me the more. More than anything, I wanted to cross the table, and get my hands on her neck. It will give me great pleasure to squash it. No. I shook my head mentally. It will be much better to have her heart jump from her chest into my hands, and then I will chop her body into tiny parts, and have them scattered within the castle for Killian to find them. The thrill alone flushed down my rage. But as soon as I broke out of my thoughts, the rage and hate were back as I remembered something. I could not harm her. I wasn't allowed to even touch a hair on her head. It was the one thing I was forbidden to do. I bottled up my rage and emotions, releasing a small smile of my own. Mark my words, tramp, you wouldn't live to see that day you speak of. I leaned on the stupid table between us. Killian was mine alone until you rammed into our lives, and until I am done with him, he will continue to be mine, I whispered to her. I watched her eyes twitch with something in them, but I couldn't tell exactly what was in her gaze. Her smile was still plastered on her lips though. Oh, I miss the days when I could smack that smile off her lips and even Killian would do the same. But now, everything is different. How could I let that happen? I curse the mate bond between these wolves. Never in my wildest thought did I foresee Killian falling for this tramp. That wasn't in my plans, and I had to fix this mess. I had to get her out of here. Until you are done with him, the tramp spoke, her deep blue eyes regarding me. What do you mean by that? She asked, and a smile unexpectedly found my lips. It's good to know she is not completely stupid. Only time will tell. I took a step back, loving the seed of fear that I had successfully planted in her eyes. She should be scared of me. She has no idea what I am capable of doing to get what I want. I walked to the door and was about to pull it open when she called out to me. Thea, I spun around to find her gaze on me. There are some battles that cannot be won, and some things that cannot be broken. The bond Killian and I share is one of them. She said confidently. I felt my anger rise to the maximum. Without saying a word, I stormed out of the office, heading to my new chamber. As soon as I was in, I shut the door behind me. I was vibrating with so much rage that I couldn't stop the screams that left my lips. I felt the blood within me burn intensely, causing the torch in my chamber to burn fiercely. But I couldn't care about that. The stupid chamber could burn again for all I care. Even after risking my life, and burning down my chamber, it was still for nothing. Yes, I got Killian to stay with me last night. But it doesn't mean he would spend the remaining nights with me like he usually did. A lot had really changed between us. Killian didn't even want to be next to me. Last night, I could tell his mind was somewhere else, or rather, on someone else. I knew the only reason I hadn't been sent out was because I was the one he desperately needed. The gifted one, as they called it. I plopped on the bed, thinking. The night of the crescent moon was only a few weeks away, and then the stupid witches will try to break the curse. I need my plans to be executed before then. I have put in so many years into my revenge to fail now. I sighed, calming myself, but the subtle sounds from the window called my attention. I stalked to the window, tugging on the draperies. I pulled them apart, and the black owl from last night came into view. Hurriedly, I opened the window and allowed it in. It had a message for me from the alpha. I removed the folded paper in its beak, unfolding it as quickly as I could. I read through it, and with every word on it, a frown grew on my face. My brown eyes fell on his last word to me. It was more of a warning. She should not be harmed, no matter what. I squeezed the paper, screaming in rage. I used my witch's magic to burn it to ashes. Why doesn't he understand that that tramp stands in my way? With her here, there is no way I could control Killian like I used to. As I was screaming in rage, the door to my chamber pulled open, and my lover walked in. What happened now? He asked, moving closer to me. I had my back against him. Tell me, mate. He whispered in my ears, his streaming breath lingering on my skin. I hated it when he addressed me as such. He pressed me closer to his large body, implanting kisses on my neck. His hands began to wander on my body, caressing me and doing wonders to my body. I moaned at his stimulating actions. This was exactly what I needed. Killian has been avoiding me for weeks now like I was some kind of plague. I need to let off some steam, purge my rage and frustration, and think about a way to get that tramp out of the picture. I turned to him, his eyes were dark with wish. Quickly, I removed the button keeping his shirt together with my magic. My hands fell on his chest. Take me now. I commanded, his lips spread in a smile. With a hand, he carried me to the bed, dropping me on it. He began to remove his pants and I watched in fascination as his hardened shaft came into my view. The tip of his member was pink and hardened for me. He began to walk to me. I bit the bottom of my lips, already aroused by him. I could already feel my core dripping wet. His hands began to loosen the ropes binding my dress to me, and instantly, they came falling to the floor. His wishful eyes wandered on my body before his hands gripped it on the bed. He began trailing my curves. I gasped as a series of moans escaped my lips, accompanied by a sweet cry of pleasure. It was a good thing I always spelled my chamber to ensure not a single noise left the corner walls, otherwise, the entire pack would have been aware of what was going on between us. He was on top of me, goodness, he was giving me so much pleasure that I couldn't bear the torture anymore. I brought my lips to his ears. I can't wait anymore. He snickered against my skin, holding my waist, and flipping us over on the bed. He was now on top of me. Swiftly, his hardened shaft slid into me. I groaned, tugging his hair as he moved with an insane speed just the way I like it. Thrusting in and out of me. I wrapped my legs around him, and he pulled me up in his arms, pumping into me more. I gripped onto him dearly, loving this ride. Soon, after we had reached our climax, we collapsed on the bed. He wrapped me in his arms. and I began to plot my next move. Just as expected, my thoughts were clear enough. A smile crossed my lips. The Alpha had warned me not to harm that tramp in any way, but she was a problem in my path, one I had to get rid of. I was up on the bed, and my companion was next to me. I rushed to the window, using my magic to call for the black owl. I scribbled down a message for someone who would love to take revenge on Killian by murdering his mate. The Alpha of the Fire Crest Pack. I sent the owl to deliver my message. "What did you just do?" he asked from behind. I smiled evilly. "I just spilled your Alpha's secret. About the curse." He sounded terrified. Whenever it had to do with the curse, everyone in the pack got like this. But this was only to get rid of the tramp and teach Killian a lesson. He is still much more useful to me alive than dead. Now everyone will know what Alpha Killian Reed has been hiding all his life. I smiled devilishly. The Alpha asked me not to harm that tramp, and I want someone else will do the honors. But it'll have to be today, before Killian and everyone else got back from the meeting. Sheila's point of view. I was done with the last paper on the table. I placed it gently on one side. I felt incredibly exhausted and hungry. My blue eyes went to the window. It was evening already. I was up from my chair and walking out of the door. I tried looking for Ria, Alan, Mason, or Jax, as they were the only ranking warriors that remained in the pack, but I couldn't find them. So, I asked the first helper I found if Killian and the others had returned from the meeting at the council castle, but I was told they hadn't. Whatever reason the council had called for a meeting must have been serious, because they were taking longer than they usually do. And I was still worried about Killian. He was in a sad mood earlier today, and that scared me. I had something to eat at the dining table, before making my way to my chamber to have some rest. After spending some minutes on my bed, strangely, I couldn't fall asleep. My mind kept on replaying the conversation I had with that psycho, Thea. It was no denying I never liked her, but there was something in her words to me, and the manner she spoke, that sent a deadly chill down my spine. She seemed like someone one should keep an eye on. I sighed at my thoughts. Maybe I was just overthinking the whole thing. With the crescent moon rising and slowly approaching, I had a sad feeling in my chest. It definitely wouldn't be as easy as I had thought, watching Killian mate with another woman, and she will be bearing his mark that was meant to be mine. It hurt. Frustratingly, I was up from the bed. I left my chamber and headed to Killian's. It was empty, so I crawled into his bed. His sweet scent invaded my nostrils, calming me and luring me to sleep. I didn't even know how I drifted to slumber. I felt at peace within me. But everything shattered with the loud growls that pierced through the castle. It was frightening, and it forced me to jerk up from the bed. I glanced around. I was still in Killian's chamber. Hurriedly, I walked to the window. It was dark outside, and the moon had already dominated the sky. Another series of threatening growls echoed within the castle. Now it seemed to be coming from everywhere. What is happening? I thought to myself. Danger! 80's voice echoed in my mind. What? My heart began to thud at an increasingly insane speed. I rushed out of Killian's chamber, hurrying outside the castle. I was almost at the tall castle doors when Alan grabbed me. Thank goodness! I searched everywhere for you but couldn't find you. Alan gasped for air, his body and clothes were covered with blood, but he wasn't bleeding. What is happening, Alan? I asked, my voice shaking with fright. The pack is under attack, he said, pausing briefly. The look in his eyes was as if things were bad. I must take you to safety at once. He grabbed me, leading me away, but I pulled him back. No. We must get the children, women, and elderlies to safety first. I escaped his firm grip, but Alan gripped my arm again. Ria and the others are on it. The women, children, and elderlies are in the underground bunkers already. Now I need to get you to safety. If something happens to you, Killian will never forgive me, Alan said quickly. And Killian? We've sent word to him, Alan voiced. Just then, Jax and Ria rushed in. Ria raced to my side, engulfing me in a hug. They have crossed the borders and scattered around the woods and paths that lead to the castle and the pack house. We are completely surrounded, Alan. Jax was in a frenzy. He was only wearing a short, and smeared in blood and dirt. This is bad, Alan muttered. Where is Mason? He threw his stare at Jax. He and a few warriors are at the pack house. Jax ran his fingers through his head. We need to get to the witch's quarters. There are still a few witches around that could help, Alan began but was cut off by Ria. They are aware, but not many of them are around. Some went to the pack house, while others were outside the castle. Ria muttered, her voice and body trembling profusely. We are outnumbered. Jax added. They must have known somehow that Alpha Killian and many of the witches and warriors are not around. How could they have found out? Ria's shaky voice sounded again. Somehow, they did. Even their Alpha is not stupid enough to make an attack in the pack for the second time, Alan said. They are here for Luna, came Jax's voice. Who's they? I finally asked. Aren't they rogues? They all shook their heads. It's the Fire Crest pack. I froze, remembering them. They were the wolves that attacked us when we were in the southern mountains on our way to the Diamond Pack. They wanted me dead because the Alpha's brother had lost his life in an attack by the Fire Crest pack in the Crescent North Pack. Ria, take Luna to the bunkers, and remain there with her, Alan ordered, as he and Jax hurried outside the castle. The loud growls from outside intensified, and I could feel the heat of the fight. Let's hurry now. Ria led the way, but I remained unmoving in my spot. Sheila, she rushed back to where I was. I need to take you down to the bunkers, they could burst in here any second from now. We should leave. I turned to Ria, holding her hand. Get to the bunker, Ria, and ensure everyone is safe. I took a step closer to the castle door when Ria gripped my arm, blocking my path. Where are you going? She asked with wide eyes that only had fear in them. The pack is under attack, and I will help out in any way I can. I will be crazy if I stayed still and did nothing, I said to her. Hurry up and leave now, Ria. No. Luna, you can't. Remember, if anything happens to you, you won't be able to heal as normal wolves do, and these imbeciles are here for you. Let's go to the bunkers, please, she begged, her eyes almost forming tears. But I shook my head. About to speak, but she muttered quickly. If something happens to you, Alpha Killian will murder us all. So please, listen to me. But I shook my head. About to speak, but she muttered quickly. If something happens to you, Alpha Killian will murder us all. So please, listen to me. I do understand where she was coming from, but there was no way I would stay still and do nothing when my own people were fighting hard to protect the pack and everyone in it. I don't plan on dying tonight, but if I did, at least I would know I did it protecting the people I love. My blue eyes were firm on Ria. I will fight alongside my people. I moved past her quickly, before she could say a word or try to stop me. I rushed out the castle doors and the sight before me made the air in my lungs vanish. There was a brutal fight going on between our warriors and the Fire Crest pack. Even some of the male pack members that weren't warriors joined in the fight. I could see the witches, they were few but they were helping out in every way they could, also fighting against the Fire Crest pack. But regardless, we were completely outnumbered. The Fire Crest pack came in a multitude like they knew exactly the number of warriors and witches that remained back at the back. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone must have shared information about the pack with them. Holy Goddess! We had a god-forsaken traitor within us. My heart curled in pain as most of our warriors were the ones getting injured, even 80 felt the pain. I glanced around, and my eyes zeroed in on a sword that was lying next to a warrior's dead body. I raced to it, picking it up. I charged at the wolf that lunged at me, aiming for its neck. In a swift motion, the sharp blade of my sword sliced through its neck, and its blood spilled on the earth, smearing my face. Another lunged at me, and I took it down, aiming for its neck. I turned to my right, 3 wolves were almost at me. I moved swiftly, aiming for their necks as it would be easier to kill them with my sword instead of aiming for their hearts. Behind you! 80's ever-conscious voice sounded in my head, as she yelled again. Duck! At her words, I ducked, just in time to evade the wolf that was about to pounce on me. Many more came at me. Before I could charge at them, a brown wolf hurried to my side, standing next to me. It was Ria. She nodded to me, and a smile found my lips. We fought off as many wolves that aimed for us. I was fighting off some wolves when I heard the loud cry of Ria. Involuntary, my eyes darted to the direction her wolf whimpered from. My heart stopped, and it was like everything and everyone suddenly became still. The only movement was from the big black wolf that had its sharp canines into the neck of Ria's brown wolf. It was literally eating off her flesh until her wolf stopped moving. No. There was a sickening chill that stalked my spine, sending waves of current to every part of my body. And then I felt it. Something within me stretched awake, and this time, nothing could stop it from emerging. Killian's point of view. I took an indrawn breath, pinching the skin of my forehead. The large council court was quiet as everyone listened to Zarya. Many ranking leaders and members from each supernatural kind were present for today's meeting. I guess the abrupt invitation by the council heads was surprising for everyone because they had requested the presence of all the supernatural kind that was a part of the council. I sighed again in frustration, and maybe rage. This meeting has been going on for hours now, and now it's already twilight. I listened more to what Zarya was saying. It was pretty serious. But frankly, my mind wasn't here at all. I just wanted to be in my pack, and next to my mate, Sheila, and so did Riker. The sickening feeling I woke up to this morning had grown increasingly within me. Riker couldn't sit still, he kept on pacing restlessly at the back of my mind. I was also angst, there was something within me that had me terrified. I couldn't tell if it was my dream last night, where I saw Sheila lying lifeless on the ground, dead, or maybe it was because of the crescent moon that was slowly upon us. I couldn't tell, but I was terrified, almost as if something bad was about to happen. I sighed again, tilting my head to my left to find Valerie's worried gaze on me. I sent her a smile, assuring I was fine. My eyes fell back on Zaryat, and the frown that was on her face. The reason the council called for an abrupt meeting was because of the disturbing actions of the Dark Circle. Ever since they somehow managed to steal the Phoenix Stones from the council, they went quiet. I hissed internally, remembering that Sheila almost lost her life retrieving the stone, and still, the Dark Circle managed to get their hands on it. Recently, the Dark Circle has begun some attacks in the West. They have been going after every supernatural kind, invading their kingdoms and packs, not leaving a survivor. Most of the allied packs with the Council have been affected, and now, the Dark Circle attacks seem to be moving south. It's only a matter of time before they came to North Central, and attacked the capital. Zaryat and the witch seem to think the recent attacks and slaughters of each kind is somewhat like a pattern. And the deaths were sacrifices. A blood ritual. And that has everyone on the edge. The Dark Circle had the power of the stones at its disposal and was planning something. Whatever it was dark and dangerous. Amelie fears that whatever the Dark Circle was up to, was somehow related to the prophecy that appeared on the crystal stones 23-odd years ago. I was lost in my thoughts when I heard Riker's loud growl in my mind. He released a painful howl again, this time it pierced the core of my soul. I groaned internally, feeling the pains rooted in my bones. What is happening, Riker? I communicated with my wolf, feeling the intensity of the pains in my bones. Danger. Mate. She's in danger. Riker groaned more in pain. Find mate. His words held a deathly, terrifying chill that frightened me. Quickly, I was up from my chair, I excused myself from the court, hurrying to the tall doors. I felt a presence behind me, I spun around and my gaze fell on Morgan. What happened? His deep emerald green eyes were on mine. Something is wrong. My wolf is anxious, he says Sheila is in danger. I muttered to Morgan. What Morgan's words were cut off when Xavier, one of the ranking warriors, hastened to us. Alpha. He spoke in panic. My brows crippled, fear slowly growing in my chest. What is it? I asked, already having a bad feeling. Something was wrong. Oh, my goddess! Sheila! Please, she should be safe. I have words from the pack. We are under attack. It's the Fire Crest pack. Xavier spoke hurriedly. What? Morgan was the first to recover from Xavier's words. This is bad, almost everyone in the pack is here. Sheila. I raced past Morgan and Xavier, hurrying into the darkness that had covered the sky. I morphed into my giant black wolf and began racing off. I mind-linked Morgan to get everyone back to the pack, including the witches. I had to get to Sheila before something bad happened. Leonardo Black's point of view. My eyes zeroed in on Killian Reid from across the court. Something was wrong. I could sense the unsettledness emitting from him. Suddenly, he stood up from his seat abruptly, heading to the doors. I glanced to my right, where Jensen, one of my most trusted warriors, stood. Follow him. I ordered him through the mind link. I could feel something utterly wrong. I needed to know everything that had to do with him. Frankly, I could care less about him, but if it had anything to do with my sister, then it is very much my business. I watched Jensen trail behind the Alpha, and soon, he exited the hall. My eyes fell back on Valerie, her eyes were on me. I looked away, pulling my attention to Zarya as she continued speaking about these recent attacks on the west by the Dark Circle army. It's been increasing more, and soon, those in the south will be next. I sighed, this was no doubt the reason they wanted the Phoenix Stones. Those stones were dangerous in the wrong hands, and yet, so powerful. Its magic was capable of making the impossible possible. Whatever they were planning was no good. More than ever, Sheila's identity needs to stay hidden. I still remember the night she was taken from us by Alpha Nell. He was a part of the Dark Circle and was sent by them. When the Dark Lord, the leader of the Dark Circle, found out that a child was born, one destined to stand against him, he sent his leeches to our pack to get my sister, the prophesied one. My mother, Fiona Black, also one of the leaders of the Crystal Fortress Witches, lost her life trying to protect Sheila at all costs. That was the last time I saw her as a child, and the entire pack fell apart. Only the heavens know what the moon goddess was thinking pairing my sister with the son of the man that ruined our lives. Killian was as vicious as his father. The enmity that existed between Killian and us was one that could never be forgotten. It worries me to think about exactly what he will be capable of doing to Sheila when he learns the truth about her, that she is a Black, and a sister to those responsible for the death of his brother. Well, that didn't matter. My brother and I finally found her after 14 years of searching for her, and this time, by the goddess, we will protect her at all costs. Well, that didn't matter. My brother and I finally found her after 14 years of searching for her, and this time, by the goddess, we will protect her at all costs. The doors pulled open in a hurry, and Killian Reid's brother ambled in. He went to where Valerie was, requesting her urgent presence outside the court. Without further questions, she left the court with him. A few seconds later, some of Killian's ranking members and warriors left in a hurry. Something is really wrong. Before I could mind link Jensen, he ambled into the court. Walking hastily towards me, the look on his face was serious and somewhat fearful. I knew it wouldn't be what I wanted to hear, but somehow it made me anxious. Jensen gated to where I was, stopping right next to me. "Talk to me. What is happening?" I mind-linked him. "Alpha, it's serious." He spoke through the mind link. "It's about the Luna of the Black Blood Pack, she's in danger." Jensen's words forced me to glance at him. "What happened to her?" "The Black Blood Pack is under attack by an enemy pack, and it seems they are after her life," he muttered through the mind link, and I felt my body tremble with rage. I curled my hands into a ball. This was exactly one of the things that terrified me. Killian had so many enemies that would want to go after Sheila, just to get back at him. I would too, had it been his mate in question wasn't my precious sister. I stood up from my seat, walking around the mound towards the door when the doors burst open and Samuel, the head warrior of the council's army, rushed in. His chaotic intrusion into the court caught the attention of everyone. "What is it, Samuel? It's better be important." An elder wolf, Elder Walter, sounded, slightly irritated. "There's something outside," he was panting hard. "Everyone needs to see this," he gestured outside. Without wasting time, I hurried to the doors, stepping outside into the darkness that had covered the earth. I gazed up at the sky, and my eyes widened in horror. The once blue sky was now red. There wasn't a single star in the sky. And in the middle was a blood moon. No. It can't be. Everyone that was in the court also came outside. They were as shocked as I was. They all knew what this meant. Amelie stepped forward into the darkness, her eyes never pulled away from the blood moon. She turned to the others, her face holding disbelief, excitement, and fear as well. "She's alive! The prophesied one still lives!" As her words left her lips, I felt a sharp piercing in my chest at the realization that something had happened to my sister, Sheila Black. Sheila's point of view. I was motionless. I couldn't move. I couldn't even mutter a word. It was as if time itself had paused, stopping every motion around me. My eyes didn't leave Ria's wolf that was being bitten by the enemy's pack wolf. It kept on attacking her, its claws piercing through her neck. Her blood rushed down, smearing the earth. It didn't stop till Ria's wolf stopped moving. I gasped weakly. I felt a heavy thud in my chest. My legs suddenly went weak, about collapsing against the smeared earth. Still, I didn't pull my haze away from Ria's wolf form. She was dead. Ria was dead. Suddenly, my surroundings began to come alive and the motion soon became normal. Loud growls filled the air, wolves fighting against each other. Even with a few witches' help, we were still surrounded. Breathless gasps of death invaded my ears as many eyes continued scanning around. I watched as my people were being killed. Even worse, slaughtered like animals. One after the other, they collapsed on the earth, covered in their own blood, breathing their last. It sent a sharp pain into my chest. I didn't know when a tear rolled down my cheek. I gasped again at the sharp piercing that went into my chest, my stomach, and every part of my body. The pain was something I had never felt before, but it didn't last long as an unstoppable force began to beat within me. My legs began to tremble, my hands soon started trembling. But that was the least of my concern. I was so preoccupied with what was going on around me that I didn't realize that I was surrounded by some wolves, and one of them lunged at me. The next thing I felt was a hand on my wrist, and I was being tossed backward. My eyes fell on Alan bleeding. He was bleeding profusely from his neck, chest, arms, and head. He wasn't even healing. His weak gaze penetrated my eyes, and he whispered helplessly, "Run!" The alpha, before he could even finish his words, sharp claws sank into him from behind, puncturing through him so that the wolf's claws came out on the other side. Alan groaned. I watched in horror as blood spilled from Alan's lips. His almost lifeless gaze was still on mine. He couldn't speak, but his eyes were urging me to run, pleading with me to save myself and flee from this place. As the wolf retracted his claws from Alan, he stumbled to the ground, but I reached for him before he crashed against the earth. He fell right into my arms. His blood smeared my dress and his body had begun to lose its warmth. With one last weak glance at me, the gate of his eyes jammed shut, and he was dead. Alan was dead. The wolves that surrounded me growled in victory, and their eyes narrowed on me as if informing me I am next. 80 groaned in pain in my head. I looked around, and almost all our pack warriors were dead. Somewhere deep within me something began to push its way out. I felt only rage and pain. The two emotions were pumping in my veins, blending with the rhythm of the new force that had been growing in the pit of my stomach. I groaned in pain, crumbling to the ground. Even 80 was writhing in pain as well. This pain was different, it wasn't at all physical. It was something I couldn't describe. I felt an electric charge within me, spreading from the cave of my chest to my entire body. My senses became heightened, and the sounds around me were sharper and louder. I could feel foreign energy that escaped the earth. It was powerful, almost magical. The air also carried similar energy. In a sick and weird way it was as if it made me feel alive. Like they were the very source I needed, craved for, and denied all my life. My nails dug into the earth, feeling the enormous power that seeped from it, and it felt as though I was sucking it all. I couldn't control my body again. It was on overdrive. My eyes were closed, but I felt the heavy steps of the wolves that rushed toward me. Their aura was dark and impure. They were almost at me when the rage and pain I felt fused up into one, and my eyes pushed open, torching a bright shade of blue. The enormous power I felt from the earth and the air danced around me, and I released a loud scream that sent everyone flying. The energy from it could literally be felt. Suddenly, the darkness around covered the earth and the sky. My scream held so much power that went around the pack, causing so much destruction and chaos. And I couldn't even stop it. The earth began vibrating beneath me, and the air around me adopted a certain roughness as it began spiraling out of control. The darkness that held the sky disappeared, and the sky became red. From the middle, a full moon emerged, blending in with the color of the red sky. It became a blood moon. The whole pack was covered with a red mist. I stopped screaming, but the force inside of me kept on pumping harder and more violently. I felt the chaos within me. It seemed like whatever was happening within me was the cause of the earth's destruction, and the violent movement of the air as it grew worse. I wasn't in control of my body, and the forced pumping within me finally broke free. Kaiser Black's point of view. My heart was beating so fast in my chest. I was in my gargantuan grey wolf, racing through the thick forest with some of my warriors from the Black Blood Pack. We moved through the shortest path there was to get to the Crescent North Pack. Word was sent to me that the Crescent North Pack was under attack, and today was the council's meeting. Many of the ranking members and warriors from each pack attended, leaving the pack more vulnerable than ever. Honestly, I didn't give a double F*K about them. They could all burn for all I care. My concern was for the Alpha's mate, Sheila. The prophesied one, and my little sister. She was all that I cared for. I couldn't stop the fear that kept stabbing my chest just at the thought of harm coming to her. I wouldn't be able to bear it. This was exactly what I always warned my brother, Leo, about. Sheila was in much more danger in that pack. That fool of an alpha had many enemies, and this wasn't good for Sheila as she would be their target to get back at Killian Reed. We just crossed into the Crescent North Pack borders from the mountains. We kept racing, taking a quick path that led to the castle. We were almost there when a strong wave of energy hit us. It sent every one of my warriors flying, and it almost had me too, but I was quick to root my paws firmly into the ground. I didn't need any shaman to tell me who just released such an enormous wave of energy. I could feel it. It had to be Sheila. That force carried its energy from the air and the earth. She must have channeled it. I didn't know if I should feel proud of her or worried. She didn't have any memories from her childhood, and hadn't practiced in a long time but was still able to channel something this powerful. She was indeed a black in every way. I turned to my warriors. Hurry! Find the Luna at once! I ordered through the mind link as every one of the warriors scattered around the pack to search for Sheila. Only a few in the Black Blood pack really knew Sheila's true identity, and it had to stay that way. I continued heading to the castle. I could already see the outline of the castle from afar when the sky turned black, the earth beneath me began to vibrate, and the air was violent. Soon, the darkness in the sky evaded, leaving a red sky, with the full moon in the middle, also red. This was unusual. A blood moon. It wasn't supposed to appear today. No. No. This was bad. The only time a blood moon had appeared abruptly in the sky was the night the prophecy about the white wolf, also the prophesied one, appeared on the crystal stones. And it also appeared abruptly on the night that child was born, my sister. An unusual blood moon signified her. This was bad. This was exactly what Leonardo fought against. With this, every person in our realm will come to know the prophesied one still lives, and that includes the Dark Circle.